Dead Space was developed by EA Redwood Shores, later renamed to Visceral Games, and released in October 2008, although it did get a remake in 2023, but we're not talking about that version. This is based on the 2008 original version, which is still crazy to think that EA, of all people, actually kept up the original version of the game when so many companies are willing to remove the original versions when a remake is made. Dead Space is also heavily influenced by Resident Evil 4. Sure, many games are, but Dead Space in particular really wears its inspirations on its sleeve, and that's a good thing. I'm not trying to insult the game for it. Our main premise is to ship to Kellyan, with the engineer Isaac Clarke, our protagonist, is trying to investigate the Ishimura, with Isaac also wanting to look for his girlfriend Nicole, who is on the Ishimura, and send him a message. But the Kellyan ends up crashing into the Ishimura, causing them to now be stuck on it, and there are now mysterious monsters on it that end up picking off most of the crew, leaving off only Isaac Clarke himself, Zach Hammond, and Kendra Daniels, all while trying to explore the Ishimura that's infested with these monsters called Necromorphs, trying to figure out what happened to the crew, where is Nicole, what is unitology, and what is a marker. This game both throws the player and the crew of the Kellyan into the deep end immediately. You get no explanation. Alright, time to go in, these things are coming after you, go, 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 go. This video is based on the original Dead Space. That means Isaac Clarke is a mute main character, because he didn't have much speaking role until Dead Space 2, and also does speak in the Dead Space remake. But here, while seeing complaints about him not talking, my issue is the fact that he doesn't talk. It's the fact that they'll take more advantage of his body language to really get across his personality well, aside from some instances in the story, and also the way he starts reacting to getting Necromorphs off of him when they grab him, with one enemy in particular, the way he violently destroys that thing with ever prejudice highlights the level of, oh dear god, I am sick of this shit kind of thing. Although it does get weird when there's one point where a character somehow is able to know what Isaac is thinking despite the fact he hasn't said anything to them the entire time, so there is that bit of weirdness of, how did you know what he was thinking? Isaac does have a diary of sorts when it comes to the game's objectives, so there is occasional moments where, aside from just telling you what the objective is, Isaac does add his own commentary to them, but still just not a whole lot for his character to really go off of, or at least when compared to how talkative everyone else is in the game. And on New Game Plus, you do also get more diary entries that then add more to Isaac's backstory. It's not as if Isaac has nothing to work with. I just wish that there were more moments in the story where he had more emotion on him with his body language, especially with some of the stuff he does have to witness firsthand in the game. We'll see complaints that because the fact that Isaac's silent, that means that he has to essentially be told what to do by the other characters, which some people make it seem as if that means Isaac is incompetent job as an engineer, to which I go, just because the characters have an idea what needs fixing, that in no way, shape, or form means they could do what Isaac does in the slightest when it comes to making repairs in the Ishimura to get more and more things going. Just because you know what a problem is, doesn't mean you yourself can fix it. Plus, Isaac being silent does mean that whenever any odd noise or any odd thing happens while you're exploring, it is immediately the player that's the one going, what the was that? Kind of thing, as opposed to needing to have the writing essentially tells you something wrong just happened and look over here. And while I get complaints that it does make Isaac seem more of an errand boy of sorts, since he's constantly being told, hey, go here, fix this for me please, it's not that the other characters aren't also pulling their weight with how they're assisting to try and remedy the situation. There's more the fact that since they're off screen, it's just easier for people to kind of believe they're not doing as much, which is completely not the case, especially when you do link up with them at points and see aftermath situations they were trying to essentially fix themselves. Overall, when it comes to the story of Dead Space, I do like what's going on, and I really don't agree with the complaints I've seen that, oh, the game has quote unquote several plot holes. I'm like, I don't agree with that at all. Or the complaints such as, oh, freaking Daniels is insubordinate really quickly. It's like, I mean, she just wants to gather alive, everything, so I can't exactly blame someone who's not want to listen to Commander who's like, let's investigate and see and find out what's going on, as opposed to, how about we don't die and just get out of here kind of thing. Not helped by the fact that Hammond's rig keeps going out multiple times, so while there's situations of friction between the two of them talking, you also don't get Hammond's side of situations. You have to wonder, is he dead? And then try to find out, okay, you're still alive, but you're not doing well and stuff going on. So it adds more to the tension, the fact that one or two people who you can even talk to ends up in situations where he can't keep the communication up. Also want to note that while I knew that the game's UI was diegetic, I didn't know that borderline everything gameplay-wise in the game is diegetic, with characters or stuff in the world acknowledging the stuff and technology that Isaac's using, acknowledging the stuff like kinesis, everything, and the fact that it's just part of the universe and how everything functions. Not a thing just for this a gameplay, it is stuff that everyone there could potentially use himself, but Isaac's the engineer, he's the one fitted with it, he's the one wearing this big power suit to help him make repairs, he's the one being able to just slow things down to make it easier to do his job. Making it all diegetic is freaking cool of the developer. They didn't have to do that, but it's freaking cool that they did. It adds to the world of Dead Space. Now for the gameplay, with Dead Space being a third-person action horror game. And one thing I was surprised they did was really emphasize from the get-go that you get to dismember Necromorphs. Because I was expecting at least a small bit where you wouldn't exactly be told that to try and at least figure it out yourself before someone mentions it. But no, off the bat, you find scrollings on the wall that tell you to remove the limbs, you find audio logs telling you remove the limbs, and then you have Hammond also instructing you, do not try to fight them regularly, you must dismember them. Which is something that, of course, the crew of Ishimura would have realized and would have made messages for. I'm surprised that it's immediately told to the player, especially since people complain about how can this engineer be able to fight these things better than trained professionals. Well, there you go. He knows the weakness of the Necromorphs right off the bat, and the other people don't. One thing I quickly realized that Isaac didn't have was a quick turn option whatsoever. I was like, am I doing it wrong? And I looked up and found out the developers specifically omitted a quick turn because of the fact that they wanted the suit Isaac's wearing to feel very bulky, so they wanted to really sell the illusion by having it so Isaac wasn't fully as mobile compared to other horror protagonists. To which I say, even without a quick turn, Isaac is still insanely mobile, especially compared to the direct inspiration of this game, Leon and Resident Evil 4, so kind of funny that they wanted Isaac to feel way more slower and bulky, but he still feels way quicker, especially with his run speed and everything going on, so the quick turn wasn't exactly necessary. Also the fact that since you're on the mining ship in Ishimura, it also means that all the weapons you're getting are specifically mining tools of sorts that Isaac is just repurposing into weapons, which is just a very cool detail, with the only exception of course being the pulse rifle that's blatantly just a space machine gun, but it's still a cool thing that, hey, I got a mining tool, and now I will use it to obliterate these monsters in various ways. Where Isaac's suit does feel appropriately bulky is the fact that his melee options are absolutely terrible and are only a last resort to try and get at least a small amount of space from the enemy and you. Do not try to rely on them or even run in and use them. It will just get you hurt because Isaac's not exactly efficiently throwing smacks at enemies. Even the stomp that Isaac can do in succession is only really useful when it comes to breaking apart Necromorph bodies in order to get more ammo from them. And speaking of ammo, this game gives you so much ammo for your weapons because it wants to simply fight off the Necromorphs and not just run for them. There are some situations where you can leave the room without having to fight them, but equally, there are also many situations where you are locked in a room until all the Necromorphs in it are defeated. So this game, that's why I say this game is specifically action horror, and not exactly survival horror because it wants to take out the enemies. You do also have extra tools such as the kinesis ability, which allows Isaac to just pick up stuff and move it around, and where you can use it as a weapon in order to actually harm the Necromorphs. One thing I don't like is its physics are a bit awkward because there are points where you need to actually slide stuff or move stuff into freaking crevices, but sometimes the game won't register it as the item being in the correct spot, and it'll instead just shake around and then fly back out, making me think I was doing something wrong. But no, it was the physics that were wrong, and so I had to keep trying to get, like, for example, batteries into freaking slots. Come on, get away, come on, go, get in, come on, get the damn thing, come on, there we go, kind of thing, because of how awkward it just ends up moving like that. So there are some awkward physics, or there are points where you have to move certain objects in order to progress, and there's one point where you had to hide behind cover, but use the kinesis to move an object in order to actually protect Isaac from environmental hazard, and it's so awkward on top of the awkwardness of the hitbox of the hazard that you can see yourself just taking damage constantly in this section, and it's completely unfair to the player. You do also have the ability to be able to slow things down, once again, mostly used for puzzles, but can be used in combat scenarios, although I didn't really find myself using this much because, well, there's a lot of Necromorphs are moving too fast that I couldn't handle shooting them, and Necromorphs that are literally designed to be quick, just really feel like they were moving so fast I couldn't just shoot their legs out very quickly and everything. So I mostly just used it for the puzzles and didn't really bother upgrading this aspect, which is another thing. You can upgrade Isaac's toolkit with power nodes, but the ones you find in the locales are pretty limited, on top of the fact that the power nodes can be bought, but they're generally expensive, so when I get a lot of upgrades, that's gonna be an issue because of the fact of how much they cost, and your equipment needs so many power nodes, with me mostly focusing on upgrading Isaac's suit, since I want to keep Isaac alive first and foremost. Lastly, there's also the air meter for certain segments where you go to locales that don't have air in it, of course. But you don't want to upgrade this part of the suit, you can also get air canisters to help you out as well, but since I primarily upgraded the suit, it meant there was never an instance in which I felt like Isaac was close to running out of air, or they needed the air canisters, so I constantly just sold them to the shop and didn't use them. Same with the stasis packs, I also constantly kept selling them for the money. Hell, at times I would have so much ammo, I would also sell the ammo to the shops for extra money. The biggest surprise to me gameplay-wise is just how much variety into Necromorphs and stuff they can keep throwing at you, even late into the game. There was a point where I thought I was almost done with Dead Space, I felt like it was wrapping up towards the finale, only to realize I was only halfway into the game and there was still a lot more going on top of the fact that they still had new types of Necromorphs to still keep throwing at me, making me go, damn. If this were a modern game, I would have been done way back there, but you're telling me it is only halfway over. And despite how many Necromorphs are out to kill Isaac, the biggest threat to me was the environmental hazards from the Ishimura being broken, because for the most part, the environmental aspects are actually just insta-kills towards Isaac. It is rare to just deal damage, and don't just immediately eviscerate this man's entire body kind of thing. So it's one of those things that you need to be way more careful with these things compared to the enemies that you're told are also meant to be taken with extreme care. I mentioned earlier how everything in the game is diegetic, but because everything is diegetic, that also means that when you're doing stuff, the game doesn't pause. There's a dedicated pause button, but if you're going through Isaac's rig to go through your items on the map, the game's still going. Going on the shop, game's still going. going to upgrade bench, the game's still going, so you better make sure there's no Necromorphs around you whatsoever, or they won't be able to get pot shots on Isaac. And there was one point to the shop, and there was a Necromorph in the distance that I couldn't back out in time of, and Isaac took hits because of it. Hell, there was one point where I went to save the game while there were still the screams of Necromorphs in the room and went, there's a problem for me in the future to handle. F you past me. I also like that each chapter has Isaac in a certain section of the Ishimura, making it so you're not potentially backtracking through the entirety of the damn thing, so it's easier to look around, search for extra goodies, go off the beaten path. But if the player does get lost or is unsure where to go, Isaac can make a line on the ground, directly pointing the player on where to go. Once again, isn't real time, so make sure don't do when enemies are around, and it also makes Isaac vulnerable since he's stuck in the position for a bit, and even has a bit of time where even when he's pointing his hand back, he is still vulnerable kind of thing. I like the vulnerability of it, granted, who the hell is using it when Necromorphs are around, but it's still a fun thing to have, although I've seen people constantly cite that insert other games should have this mechanic, or that every game should have a mechanic where the player can just immediately make a direct line on where to go, which at that point, I have some issues that everyone wants the mechanic everywhere. One thing I really like is there are moments where Isaac is in immediate danger and the player needs to act fast, but they do it by still having you aim from the perspective of Isaac, making it harder to line up your reticle because of the position you're in, on top of the fact that these situations usually also have Isaac getting dragged or shaken around, making it even harder to keep your aim. I really like these segments because of the tension of it, the fact of the friction of how difficult it is to aim, and the fact you need to still act fast because Isaac is seconds within death. And while equally the Necromorphs also dominate health indicator as well, there are points where I ended up wasting all my ammo trying to kill a certain Necromorph going, is it dead? Is it dead yet? Is it dead yet? Is it dead yet? And it turns out I was fighting the thing the entire wrong way the entire time. I went, well, waste all my ammo. Isaac, time to reload, kind of thing. And by reload, I mean, time to get your head chopped off real quick. So, there is that instance where, once again, because you can't kill the normal means, there are sometimes it's true that you figure out when you're exactly doing damage to them, since it's not always made apparent. And there were points, one point actually, where I was fighting a boss, and I wasn't sure I was actually killing the thing, because it's roaring, it's ready to get taking damage, but it's still going. Am I doing it right? The answer was, I was doing it right, it just took a lot of hits. I also love the zero gravity segments because of how disorienting it was when I need to reposition Isaac, to the point where sometimes I'm like, great, now that I did this, where exactly is the floor again? Kind of thing, because I don't know where anything was. I don't remember if I was on the wall, on the ceiling, on the other wall, because of the zero-G segment just have you all over the place and going, great, now which way's down again? Now for the game's text, which the subtitle size is just abysmal, and it's really the only big issue I have with the game's text because of the fact that everything else is diegetic, so it always floats in front of Isaac or a little hover thing, so we have a backdrop. They're bigger and easier to read, especially compared to the subtitle what's going on. Although you could argue that because they hover around Isaac, it means some positioning you have of him can make it a bit more difficult to read compared to other things. There's the fact that the subtitles are a big offender. They're so tiny, and because they're the only non-diegetic thing in the game, they just exist in this small little vacuum while everything else is easier to read. Even the stuff in the environment, whether it be the scrollings on the wall or the signs in the environment, are easier to read. Like compared to the subtitles, they just end up standing out. On top of the fact that the subtitles are also the only thing without a window around them, and it's just so weird. Like even in the intro with the subtitles on, the credits, the opening credits, are bigger than the subtitles for the conversations going on. And Dead Space is still a very wordy game, even if Isaac doesn't talk. You have plenty of audio logs and stuff like that they go get around to. So once again, it's so weird how everything else is made diegetic, everything else is made to fit the world and be more viewable, except for the subtitles. Overall, I think Dead Space 1 is great. I like the story going on and how it's being told everything, and I'm fine with Isaac being a silent character. It just needed a bit more emoting from him in order to really still sell his response to what's going on, since his diaries aren't exactly enough to really get his thoughts across, but you can still have a main character be silent and everything and still have a story work. I'm not one of those people who goes, silent main character equals bad. No, there are ways you can do it and make it work, and they do manage to make it work for the most part, except for segments where characters just somehow know what he's thinking. I love the action horror gameplay going on, and the tools Isaac is using, what's going on. Also the fact that, well, you do have some tools that can be comparable to other third-person shooters, like, oh, clearly this thing's your pistol, this thing's your machine gun, you have an effing flamethrower kind of thing. But then there's just other weapons, like the freaking, I think it's called like the spinner that just makes an entire saw blade spin around, and my god, that weapon is so resourceful considering the little amount of ammo need to use to kill entire hordes of necromorphs. It is beautiful, but shows how it's all just pretty much mining tools, engineering tools, just being repurposed into a weapon. So it is a bit awkward because of the range it's used kind of thing, but it should be awkward. These aren't tools made to kill people. The way they constantly have you fixing up parts of the Ishimura, constantly highlighting that Isaac is the engineer and only engineer around what's going on, it constantly just flicking things across. Rather than solely just investigating a place to figure out what's going on, you're constantly trying to actually fix it so the other characters can then try and do stuff like either investigate further like Hammond, or like Daniels, who's constantly trying to make distress calls and trying to get them out of the danger and everything so they can do their task. They can't do their task unless Isaac's doing this, although there are points where they ridiculously go, hey Isaac, there's something here organic that's blocking this thing, can you go take care of it? And I walk into the room and go, lady, did you just tell me to go walk up and kill this thing? I don't even know what I'm even looking at. The stuff that Dead Space adds that only Dead Space could do, whether it be the airless segments which are quickly get the task done before Isaac runs out of air, or just the zero gravity segments where you're just jumping all around or to solve the puzzles while dealing with the hazards from the destruction of the Ishimura, just adds so much to what's going on top of the aspect of dismembering all the necromorphs instead of just killing them regularly through headshots and the like. Really adds to itself how the developers at EA Red Shore or Visceral Games were able to pretty much take the inspirations they had and go, now we're making it truly our own. And it's the kind of stuff that I've never seen any other kind of game do. What I said about Dead Space and why they go with the original instead of the remake, because my friend told me to get a slight edge to the original, so decided to go with that, even if many people will point towards the remake and the changes it makes. But, oh, I already played the original. You can't make me unplay it. That's all I gotta say about Dead Space. Alrighty then, good day.